Okay, so I've started the recording and then we can begin. So I'm just going to start off first by asking whether anybody has got any questions that they want to ask, if they've come with any questions that they specifically want the answers to. You're welcome to ask any questions, and then also remember it's informal, so while we're chatting, you're welcome to ask questions. You can type it in the chat bar, and then when I come back to the chat bar, I'll see the question and I'll answer it for you. Or otherwise, you can just put up your hand at the bottom there, and you can open your microphone and you can speak. I will be sharing my screen, which means that I can't immediately see the chat when I'm in the PDF, but I can always hear if somebody has posted something, and then I'll come back to the chat and have a look. Okay, so if I don't immediately come back to the chat when you've asked the question, I'm not ignoring you. It's just that I will come back to the chat at some point. Okay. Everybody happy with that? Okay, so I see we have got another couple that joined us. All right, so what I am going to do this evening then, if no one has any specific questions that they, is that, oh dear, my num lock's gone off, that's better. Any specific questions at this point is I'm going to work through the first couple of questions of the 2022 exam paper. And the questions in this paper are different to the 2018 and the 2020 paper that we've already gone through. So there's some questions in here that are different. So again, it will give you just a little bit of a mix of other questions. Some of the questions you'll see are similar, and that is usually the case. There's certain questions that they generally ask, but again, we can't guarantee that they might ask something completely different. And I don't see the paper, the exam paper, beforehand. So at this stage, I don't know what questions are in the paper itself. Okay. Hi, Milka, go ahead. What? Have you got a question?
Hi, ma'am, how are you?
Hi. Sorry, let me just turn my volume up. Better. Okay, that's better. Okay, go ahead. Hi, I'm good, thank you.
Thank you. I just wanted to find out, I was listening to one of the recordings. I think you had a 2018 paper that you were doing. So I tried to look for the paper on the past exam paper library on this, but I couldn't really find the exact. I'm not sure, maybe I missed something. Is it possible? Because when I'm trying to like follow through with the recording and all, it's not really necessarily visible on YouTube. I don't know if it's me or everyone else can see, but is it possible? Maybe we can just post the paper so that when I'm listening to your recording, I can also follow through with the paper like on the side. I don't know if it's not too much trouble for you.
No, I can do that for you. Yeah, it is quite possible. Did you find a 2018 paper in the library, but it wasn't the one that I was doing?
I should think so. Yeah, from what I picked up, it was not the same as the one that you were using on the recording.
Okay. Yeah, that is quite likely, because what happens with the exam paper, they always produce 3 different versions of the exam paper, because there's 3 sit-ins. You know, you've got the first sit-in, then the supplementary sit-in, and then the third sit-in. So there's a different paper for each of those 3 sit-ins. So they only upload 1 paper to the library. So I don't know which one of the 3 they upload, and I might then practice with one of the other versions. So that's why it might not be the same that they've got in the library. But I'll make a note here quickly. I will upload to more resources, or I'll put it in announcements, the 2018 and the 2020 and this 2022 paper that I'm going to do tonight. I'll upload all 3 of those for you so that you have got them. Okay, but just also, just bear in mind, I did get an email now from a student, and I'm not sure if it's one out of your group, where there's one of the students that's asking me for the memo. Just remember that the lecturers are not allowed to upload memos for students. you're allowed to have the question papers, but we can't share the memos with you. So we use the memos in a collab when we are discussing the questions, but I can't post the memo to more resources or to announcements for you. Okay, so you'll just have to use the recording to follow the memo. And yes, I know the YouTube, I've noticed that when you watch the paper on the YouTube, the writing is not that clear. And yeah, it just is. I think it's to do with the quality when YouTube converts the video, I don't know what you call it, you know, the quality of the video is a little bit lower than the actual recording, and so it does become difficult to read properly. Yeah, which isn't great. Let me just quickly make a note here to upload the question paper so I don't forget.
Not a problem. Thank you so much.
Okay, pleasure. Okay. Who sets the paper? So, Shasta, you've got a question. So one of the lecturers sets the paper because, you know, the paper is national. So across the whole country, whoever is writing the module, you guys all write the same paper. And each semester, one of the lecturers sets the paper. So it all depends on who is setting the paper for that particular module in that semester. I do some of the other modules, and I also do the editing and reviewing for some of the other modules, but this semester I haven't done this particular module. And obviously the papers are secret, so whoever they're not shared with any of the lecturers who weren't involved in the actual writing of the paper prior to the date of the exam. Okay, so let me go. Okay, so I'm going to go over to sharing my screen, and then I'll pull up the paper and we can have a look at some of the questions. Okay, so hopefully you can see our little kaleidoscope now, and I'll go and open the paper. So hopefully you can see that. One thing I just want to remind you guys also before we start is that don't get so involved in practicing all of the calculations and formulas, etc., for the exam that you forget to practice or prepare your theory questions. I actually was just trying to take a quick look in this paper to add up the number of marks for theory, but they usually have, it could be up to at least 20% of the paper that is theory questions and not calculations. Like you can see, for instance, this first question over here for 5 marks, explain the shape of the yield curve according to the market segmentation theory. So this is a learning unit 4 question. And this will be one of the learning objectives. Remember, that's where you are going to find your theory questions that you need to learn. Will be the learning objectives, and they have got the list of the learning objectives at the beginning of each learning unit, which you can find the list on Learn. If you go to your module on Learn and you click on learning units, it brings up the list of each learning unit. And if you click on your learning unit number, that very first screen that comes up is the list of the learning objectives. So those are the learning outcomes, which means that is what they will ask you, and they're not allowed to ask you anything else that's not one of those learning objectives. So it is very important that when you do your revision, you make sure you know what the learning objectives are for each learning unit, and then you revise those specific things. So you'll see if it's a theory question, it will say, it will have the terminology, something like discuss or explain or define and then you'll know that that's a theory question. Okay. So please don't forget that, because I often get when I mark papers that all the theory questions students just leave blank, which means it could be up to 20% of the paper that you're not even attempting because you didn't practice your theory questions, you didn't prepare for those. So I'm not going to go through these, the theory questions, because they literally come directly out of the textbook. So again, your textbook is all that you need to prepare for the exams. Everything that you need is in the textbook. So your theory questions, you'll find in the textbook under the relevant heading. And then for the calculations, you've got your examples and the questions that you can then use to practice. And when you've mastered those and you understand them, then you can go and practice with a past exam paper. And then also, obviously, watching those videos where I'm working through an exam paper will be very helpful for you to understand the concepts and the calculations and the formulas, so that you understand how they work. Okay, so then let's have a look at the rest of, so question 1 is 20 marks. And again, remember what that means is that for this question, that in total, you've got 20 minutes of your 180 minutes to complete this question. So you must be very strict with yourself and watch these minutes and make sure that you don't go over the time for any given question. And if you're getting stuck and it's taking long, just leave the question and move on. And remember, I also always remind you guys that when you get your question paper, you're going to, in that 15 minutes reading time, you're going to read through the paper and you're quickly going to decide which question you're going to do first, which question you're going to do second, and so on, based on the question that you know the best and that you can do the quickest, and that will give you the maximum number of marks down on your answer book as quickly as possible. That's the best way to ensure that you've got 50% down on your paper before the 3 hours is up. And then whatever time you've got left at the end, you can then use for those questions that you're not that sure about or that are going to take you a little bit longer, but then you're not panicking that you've left out a question that afterwards, when you go and read the paper, you go, oh, I knew that question, I wish I had have done it. That's also a very important strategy. So also be strict with yourself with doing that. Okay, so let's go and have a look at the required first. And remember also, you're going to take a highlighter with you to the exam and a red pen and maybe some other color Sharpies and stuff, so that you can underline and circle and make sure that you know exactly what's going on. That's also very important. So they've asked us for 8 marks based on your calculations. So obviously there we know we're going to have to do some calculations. Advise Mr. Ninama whether he should go ahead and purchase the bond. Okay, so that is then number 1. We're going to do some calculations, and then using those calculations, we're going to advise Mr. Ninaba. And he's got a required rate of return of 8.5. Sorry, let me just go back. I've done that. Based on our calculations, so our calculations is going to be the first thing that we do, and then after we've done the calculations, we're then going to make sure that we advise Mr. Ninaba and tell him whether he should or shouldn't go ahead. If they ask you to advise him, there will be marks allocated for that part of the question. So don't forget, always go back and read the question and make sure you answered everything that they asked us. So here's another bit of important information that we need to highlight, and that his required rate of return is 8.5% per annum, because we know we need that in our calculations. So they've then said that he's approaching retirement. He's asked for our assistance in advising him on a bond. So this involves bonds, which is going to be our learning unit 4. That will give him an annual income. So what type of cash flow or what variable do we use for annual income? an annual income of at least 11,400. That's what he wants. So in other words, repeating year after year, he wants an income of 11,400 each year. So what variable are we going to solve there? Hi Norman, how you doing? What variable in our formulas do we use for an amount that is equal and repetitive? Anybody remember? Remember, we've got a basic set of variables that we use, and those same variables we use over and over again in all of our time value of money calculations, and those same variables we use in the share valuation and the bond valuation, in our capital budgeting. We use the same ones. Anybody going to want to guess? PMT. Does that ring a bell? So this is one of the real tricks to making sure you do well and you know what to do in these questions and you know which formula to use, is that you immediately, as you read in the question, you recognize, and as you can see above, I don't know if you can see in the writing here, as you read in the question, above the amount you're going to write, highlight it and write PMT, because so that when you come to do your formula, you've already identified what they've given you, and then you can identify which variable are they asking you to calculate. So he's concerned that the interest rate being offered by the banks is only 5.5%. So that's banks, okay? So if he had to invest his money in a bank, he would be getting 5.5% interest per annum. But he thinks that that's too low. So one of his colleagues has said that he should purchase these particular bonds, and the bond has got a price today. In other words, if he had to go and buy it today, it's got he would purchase it at a discount of 15%. So what is that? A discount of 15%. The 15% is a discount of what value? The price today, if they say discount of 15%, that's a discount of which amount? Have a look at the other amounts that they've given us. The par value of the bond is 125,000. So remember, the par value is the maturity value of the bond. It's got a yield to maturity of 12%, which means the return of this bond is going to be 12%. And it's got 10 years to go from now until when the bond matures. And the interest is paid biannually, which means twice a year. Not the coupon, yes. Shavana, par. At the discount of the par value. Remember, the par value of a bond is the face value. It's the value of the bond that when that bond matures, that's the amount that's going to be, no, exactly, well done. The amount that's going to be paid out. So a bond always has, if you think about it as like a note, let's say if you think of a 50 Rand note, it's got a fixed amount of 50 Rand printed on it. So a bond is the same. The bond has got a fixed amount of that par value or the maturity value printed on it, and that's fixed and unchangeable. Then on a bond, the other thing that is fixed and unchangeable is the coupon percentage. So I think, Norman, that's what you were thinking of. So if it says this is the amount that we're going to have to calculate, is what is that coupon percentage? That coupon percentage is also a fixed amount that doesn't change. So that means the PMT, which is the amount that the bond pays out year after year, also doesn't change, because our PMT is equal to the par value multiplied by the coupon rate. So those three amounts are fixed and they don't change during the life of the bond. But quite often, especially if this bond has still got 10 years to maturity, when this bond is sold or traded on the market that it's selling in, it doesn't get sold for exactly its par value, because it depends on what the current market rates are, and it also depends on how many years are left to maturity, what the actual price today of that bond is going to be. So the price that you pay for it, if you were to go and purchase that bond today, is very seldom going to be equal to the actual par value of the bond. So when they say the price today is, the bond is trading at a discount of 15%, it means a discount of 15% to its par value. And if it says a discount of 15%, is that going to be 15% more than the par value or 15% less than the par value? 15% more than the 125,000 or 15% less if it says it's a discount? Less, exactly. Okay, so these are the little tricks that you can know your bond calculations really well, but then when you read a question, they've thrown in things like discount of 15% and then you don't know what to do with it. So these are the kinds of things you must make sure that you understand. And if it was 15% more than the par value, how would this have been worded? If the price today was 15% more than the par value, how would this price today, how would this have been worded? Instead of saying discount of 15%, what would that have said? Something else. So what other word of 15%? What would they have said? A premium, yes, exactly. So premium of 15% means 15% more than the par value, and a discount of 15% means 15% less than the par value. Okay. So again, I have written here, and this is what I want you to do when you've got your question paper. Price today, that represents, and I hope you can still read that, that is the present value. Okay, the price of the bond today is the present value of the bond. Par value, its maturity value, is going to be the future value. The yield to maturity is our value for R in our formulas. And the term to maturity, that's the number of years, is our value for N. But then remember, R is always, don't always think of it as R divided by M, and always think of the term to maturity as N times M, so that you don't ever forget to go and have a look, what is the value for M for Mary? So what is represented by M? M for Mary. What are we looking for when we want to know what the value for M is? And in this question here, what is the value for M? Yes, it's 2 because it tells us that the bond is paid biannually. So that means that the PMT, that percentage, is an annual amount, but it will be split over 2 payments. Every 6 months, they will receive half of their coupon payment, which is why we then have to take R divided by M and N times M into account. So you can see on this question paper where I've written PMT above the 11.4, so I know that that's what they've given me, the PMT. I don't have to calculate it. They've given me the PV, the FV, they've given me R, and they've given me N, and over here they have given me M, which is biannual, which is 2. So if you look at the bottom, the variable that's missing, that they haven't given us, is then going to be this one here, the coupon rate. So that is then the value that we have to solve for. So it says, he wants an annual income of at least 11,400 in order to cover his, sorry, I'm telling you something incorrect here. Let me just go and take this out. This isn't the PMT that they've given. It's this 11.4 that they've given us isn't the current PMT. It is the minimum value of PMT that Mr. Ninaber requires. Okay. So we don't know either what the PMT value is for this bond because we don't know what the coupon rate is. We know what the par value is. We don't know what the coupon rate is. So therefore, we also don't know what the PMT, the amount of money that we'll be getting every year from this bond is. But he needs the PMT to be at least 11,400. Otherwise, the bond won't meet his requirements for the investment. Okay. So then they've said, based on our calculations, advise whether he should go ahead, and he has got a required rate of return of 8.5% per annum. So let's go and have a look at 1.2, what we are solving for. So you can see here we are computing or calculating the value for PMT. So what we'll put into our calculators, or remember, you can use your formulas and then just substitute these amounts into the formula and then solving for PMT. But doing the maths to solve for PMT is really difficult. It will take you quite long. So rather write your answer down in this format, because what we're really testing is, do you know which variable each of these amounts match up to? So the 125, which is the maturity value, is the future value. So you would punch that in 125 and then FV on your calculator. Then present value is a discount of 15%. So 125 minus 15%, you would punch 106,250 and then PV on your calculator. The 12%, they gave it to us as yield to maturity. So that's our R value. Oh, sorry, wrong one. Yield to maturity. So it's R divided by M. So 12 divided by 2. So we're going to put 6 into I on the computer. And then 10 years to go to maturity. So N times M, 10 times 2, that is what we then put into N. So 20 is what the value for N must be. And then we go comp PMT, because it's the PMT amount that we don't know. And it's also the amount that we want to know what the PMT is, because we need to know, will it be enough to cover the 11,400? So just remember also, when we have got a biannual rate and we've divided the R by 2 and times the N by 2, this amount that is calculated here when we comp PMT is the Rand value for each of those payments, for each of the 2 annual payments. Because remember, we're going to get one payment every 6 months. So each of those payments will be for 5865. So we must multiply that amount by 2 in order to get the total amount for the year. Okay. So just remember, this only really applies when it is the PMT that we've calculated, where there is more than one compounding period per year. So if this had have been 12 divided by 4 and 10 times 4, if we were being paid quarterly, then this amount here would comp PMT would give us the amount for each of those quarterly payments. And we would then have to multiply that by 4 to get the total amount for the year. Okay, so that's just one of the little tricks to this question. So they told us in the question, advise him what to do. So this is part number 1. We've calculated that he will receive 11,730 per annum. And take note here, we did not round. I can't remember, did they tell us about rounding in this question? I don't see here. If they don't tell you to round, then don't round, then leave your decimals. Okay. So here is what we need to answer. So then this is the advice. Yes, they should go ahead and purchase the bond because the yield to maturity on the bond is 12%. That was given to us, which is higher than his required rate of return of 8.5. So that's one of the reasons why he should go ahead. Okay, we didn't have to calculate that. They gave us that, and they also gave us that. So in other words, his return on the bond at 12% is more than his required rate of 8.5. And then also the annual amount that he will receive is also higher than the amount of 11.4 that he is looking for. So there were two reasons. So for the advice, you can see there were 3 marks there given for the answer to should he purchase the bond or not. Okay, so that, and they also put these other amounts in the question just to test that you know when you're calculating the PMT on the bond that you must use the required rate of that you must use the yield to maturity for this calculation and not his required rate of return. So the question looks quite simple, but there are a few little tricky bits that if you don't really know the work quite well, that you will be stuck. Okay. Any questions on this calculation or the answer, the advice that we've got to give? Did you guys follow that? You can just see how important it is that with the information, you really have to work well with your question paper. Take a highlighter, take a pen, and work with the information they've given you. So write your bits of information down that you need so you can quickly work out, okay, this is what's missing, and so this is what I've got to calculate given the information that I have got. Then the second one, which is, and guys, as you can see, that was only supposed to take you 8 minutes. So some of these questions can be super tough to read them, think about them, decide which formula you're going to do, and then do your calculations all within that given time. Norman, remember I've mentioned before, yes, you definitely will be given the formula sheet. And I've told you guys before, you must practice and do your revision with the formula sheet, and you won't be given any formulas that are not on that formula sheet. So you must be very au fait with the formula sheet so you know what formulas you'll be given and which formulas you won't be given. And remember, none of those Learning Unit 2 time value of money formulas are on the formula sheet. The formula sheet really begins with the, I've got a copy of it here, from Learning Unit 3, risk and return and standard deviation. None of the Learning Unit 2 formulas are on the sheet. So that you need to memorize, okay? So again, I've told you guys before, print your formula sheet out so that as you're doing working with past papers or practicing questions, you're using the formula sheet as your reference, because that's what's going to be on your desk when you write in the exam. So don't use the textbook formulas because you'll get used to using them, and then in the exam, you'll suddenly realize that you don't know what to do. Thanks, Norman. That was a good question. I'm glad you asked that. So the next one is, again, a formula that's not on the formula sheet. If the current inflation rate is 3.25 per annum, calculate the real rate of return that Mr. Ninaba would be receiving using the Fisher formula if he had gone ahead and invested his money in the 30-day call account. Okay, so Fisher formula you have to memorize. They won't give that to you. So again, an easy way to remember the Fisher formula is just remember that the letter I represents, does that even look like a, oh, okay, I need to take this. The letter I represents the nominal rate of return, and the nominal rate of return is equal to the real rate of return plus inflation. So I equals R plus H. Nominal equals real rate plus inflation percentage. And with the Fisher formula, all that you do is you put a 1 plus in front of all of those. So the Fisher formula is 1 plus I equals 1 plus R. Oh, I should put some brackets there. 1 plus R times 1 plus H. Okay. So if you remember your basic formula, I equals R plus H, that will give you your variables that you need. And then remember that in the Fisher formula, that plus is multiplied by, and you just put a 1 plus in front of everything. 1 plus I equals 1 plus R times 1 plus H. But that you've got to memorize. So have a look again. They've given us the inflation rate. So they've given us the value for H. We've got to calculate the real rate of return, which means we've got to solve for R. And the nominal rate would be the amount, the percentage that the bank is paying us on the 30-day call account, which is this 5.5% here. 5.5% is then nominal rate. In other words, I. So here again, you're just going to have to do a little bit of algebra. So there's your formula, 1 plus I equals 1 plus H times 1 times R. They've given us the 5.5. They gave us the H, inflation, and 1 plus R is then the amount that we have to solve for. Okay. So you can see most of the marks in this question are all for being able to write that out correctly. Look over here, that's out of 4 marks, and there's 1, 2, 3 of those 4 marks are just for being able to write that out correctly. So don't worry too much about this maths. There's 1 extra mark for getting the answer correct at the end. So don't waste a lot of time. Again, if you're battling with your algebra and you're happy with what you wrote down there, just leave it and carry on. You're only leaving 1 mark behind on the table. These little things are very important to remember when you're sitting there, because 3 hours is a long time to keep concentrating and making sure that you remember everything. And then 1.4 unfortunately says, using your answer from 1.3 above, calculate the nominal rate that banks should be offering on the 30-day call accounts if investors have got a risk premium of 5%. So this is your other interest rates, one of the other interest rate formulas, if you want to call them that, that they're testing. So remember, nominal rate, I's nominal rate, is equal to R, the real rate, plus inflation, and then plus risk premium. So if we were to include a risk premium, what would the nominal rate be if the investors had a risk premium of 5%? So again, you are now taking, they gave us I, they gave us H, they've given us R, and all you have to do is put in your answer for R that you got in 1.3 above here. And then calculate that value for I. So what I would do if you battled with your maths is literally just write a percentage over here, take a guesstimate and write R equals and a percentage down here. You will lose this mark here, but then you will get a method mark here as long as you have taken whatever your answer was here in 1.3 and you've used it correctly in the formula here in 1.4. And again, you can see all three of those marks were for writing the formula down correctly and not for that final answer. Okay. So all of that, which is quite a lot of memorizing formulas, different things to think about, that was 20 marks and 20 minutes that you needed to be able to get that done in. Okay. And that including writing out these 5 marks of explaining market segmentation theory. Any questions on that, on this one? You know, guys, and I find even with myself as well, when you look at some of these questions, and I know especially when you're starting out, when you look at them, they look like they're Greek and you can't understand what they're talking about and what they've given you and what am I supposed to be working out and which formula must I use. But the more you do these questions, the easier it becomes and the faster you can do them. Because remember, speed is definitely an issue. You do have to force yourself to work quickly. Okay, so no more questions with that one. So then let's have a look at question 2. You can read through that so long while I just find my pages here. So this question you guys are already familiar with because it's very similar to the question you had in your, what I think was must have been the first, your first assignment. In this case, Mr. Nadal intends saving for a ticket. He wants to save up a certain amount of money in 5 years' time that will enable him to pay for flights and accommodation and everything as well. Yes, it is, and hopefully they ask it again because now you guys know exactly how to answer this question. They always like this type of question, and if you don't get this exact one, you'll get something similar because what we do in third year is they won't ask you a question exactly like one of the simple questions in the textbook. They will put it into a scenario and expect you to be able to apply the theory and your formulas to a given scenario. Because remember, as a financial manager, we're problem solvers, and there's always, or as a financial advisor, there's always some kind of a problem that somebody will come to us with that we then have to use these formulas and calculations to solve the problem. So this is what they're testing. Can you actually apply what you know to a real life situation? So again, remember, and you'll see above all of these amounts, I've written the variable on the paper above the amounts, and that's going to make a huge difference when it comes to doing the writing down your answer, because you already then have saved yourself a lot of time. So as you read it, you must think to yourself, is this the PV? Is it the FV? Is it the M? Is it the R? Is it the PMT? And then write it above the amount as soon as you recognize that. So the current cost, as soon as you see current today, the amount, you know that that is the PV, okay, present value of the ticket. And with the depreciation of the rand and increases, the cost of the ticket is expected to increase at 6.5% per annum. So the 6.5 is then our value for R, and per annum is our value for M. So what will the value for M be in this case? 6.5% per annum. What is our value for M? M for Mary. R is 6.5. What is M? Yes, It's 1. And this is why I'm saying to you, you should really make sure that you're always, every time you see that formula, you are thinking about R divided by M and N times M, because what students sometimes do when it is quarterly or biannually, they completely forget that the formula has to include that calculation, and then they lose those marks. Okay, so we've got R, we know what M is, and then for the next 2 years, so that 2 years is then going to be N for Nelly. Okay, and this is 1, and then 2, because there's an and, it's going to increase by 8% per annum. So there's our second value for R and M for the rest of the time. And if it's 5 years, and that's for 2 years, then the second calculation, N, is going to be 3. Okay. So immediately you can see that they've given us PV, R, M, N. So we are going to calculate FE. What is the future value? What will the ticket cost at the end of the 5 year? That's, we want to know what the future value of the cost of the ticket is going to be. So in the required, they've said calculate whether he will be able to afford the ticket in 5 years' time. So again, that is 1, the first thing that they want us to calculate. And then there's an and, what is the expected surplus or shortage of funds, assuming that 15,000 Rand that he has withdrawn will not be used to pay for the ticket. So that's going to be a second calculation that we do. So this is very similar to your assignment question. So we now have calculated over here, firstly, what will the ticket cost in 5 years' time? That's what we want to know, and that information will give us that. Then over here, in order to save for the ticket, he will invest 35,000 Rand annually. So as soon as you see an amount is going to be paid every year over several years, we know that that is then a PMT. It's a repetitive annual amount, so it's an annuity. At the beginning of each year, so there you are going to use BGN on your calculator, or you must write that down on your answer book. Remember, that's either an ordinary annuity or an annuity due. And an ordinary annuity, the money is received or paid at the end of a year, and an annuity due, the PMT is received or paid at the beginning of each year. For 3 successive years, so 3 is going to be our value for N. In a savings account, that will earn us 10.5% interest per annum. So 10.5 is our value for R. And at the end of the 3rd year, so we're going to first calculate how much will he have at the end of 3 years. Then we're going to subtract 15,000 Rand because he's going to withdraw 15,000 Rand. And then what's left over, the balance, he will put in a fixed deposit. So a fixed deposit is then a lump sum investment, single amount, lump sum, again for the rest of the time. So that will then be invested for 2 years. And in both of these cases, the value for M is 1. So let's go and have a look at what our answer is. So first of all, we are calculating what will the cost of the ticket be at the end of the 5 years. So we had to use the initial inflation rate for 2 years to calculate the FE. Then that future value at the end of 2 years becomes the present value for the remaining 3 years. And we then grow that at the second percentage inflation for the second lot of 3 years. And that future value is then what the ticket will cost at the end of the 5 years. Okay. So this is the only place that I remember students in the assignment sometimes getting incorrect. A lot of the students took this amount and they added it to this second amount, and they said that that was the cost. But remember, this is the future value at the end of 2 years, and then you're taking that amount and you're growing it for another 3 years, so that at the end of the 5 years, this 164 is the total amount that the ticket will cost. Then we're going to look at his investment. So he's going to invest 35,000 Rand per annum in an annuity, so that's a PMT, for 3 years, earning 10.5% interest per annum. So calculate the future value at the end of the 3 years. We calculate, and there, don't forget that we are indicating BGN to indicate that that is an annuity due. So the value of his investment at the end of the 3 years is 128,000. Then he's going to withdraw 15,000 from the amount that he's saved up. So this is the amount that he's then got left. So the amount that he's got left then becomes our new present value, which we are going to invest as a lump sum for the next 2 years at 12%. So we calculate the future value of that, and we have then got 142,000. Then don't forget to answer the question, will he be able to afford the ticket or not? So we have to compare the amount that he will save up with the amount that the ticket will cost. In this particular memo, where am I now? They had a typo there, 21769. Let me just write that in. That was the incorrect amount. He had a shortfall of 21,769. So you can see also here in how you should present your answer, you must state no, he will not have enough. There's a mark for, they've asked you, will he have enough or not? So you must answer that. And then you must prove or give a reason, why did you say no? And then you state because his investment won't, at 142 is not equal to the cost of the ticket. All these little things are important in making sure that you're picking up all of these available marks. Then 2.2 is a theory question again. He's approached us to ask for an investment advice in order to reach his goal. You've suggested that the best option would be to invest in the capital market. So we must explain what the term capital market refers to, and that's for 5 marks. So just remember, when you've got a theory question, have a look at the number of marks and make sure that you are giving 5 different facts, all relevant for defining or explaining what a capital market is and how it works, or whatever they happen to have asked you. Okay, so this question 3 is also one that appeared in the assignment, and this was one that a lot of students had problems with, and I remember revising with you guys beforehand, being very specific that in a question when they are asking you to calculate the return of a portfolio, that we must calculate the return per annum. In other words, each year we calculate the return across our portfolio. In other words, asset R's return plus asset S's return plus asset T's return for the year, so that you end up with 5 expected returns for those 5 years. We add them together and then divide by 5 to get the expected return of the portfolio over the 5 years. What you don't do is work out the return for each individual asset going down. Do you understand what I mean? You must, if it's a portfolio, you must work out the return per annum. So your calculation for year 1 will be 9250 times 7% plus 75 times 16% plus 3250 times 4%, and that will equal year 1's return. And then you do the same for each year, add them together and divide by 5. In this particular question, our portfolio consisted of all 3 assets. So they said calculate the expected average return for the portfolio over the 5-year period. Round off calculations to 2 decimal places. So just take note where they give you rounding instructions. And very important, you must show all of your workings. So this one, you can definitely make up time in this one, because here they've given us 19 marks, and it shouldn't take you 19 minutes to do this calculation. So here you can see we've done exactly that. We've calculated the return for each year. And just take note, there was a typo in year 2 here, which means the memo has got an error in it. So here we calculated the return for each year. And then each of these annual returns, we added them together and then divided by 5 to get, let me just have a look here. I always write in pencil. So the actual answer here was 11.6%. Because we needed to also put 10 point, this 10 point, if you can see that, that's 10.27%. Year 2's answer. So if you know your method, this definitely will take you nowhere near 19 minutes. So you can save up some time in this question here. And then as usual for 3.2, they ask for the standard deviation, and for 3.3, they ask for the okay, 3.3 is a different question. They quite often ask for standard deviation and then coefficient of return. So they didn't ask for the coefficient, but they did ask for the standard deviation. So again, remember guys, on your formula sheet, you've got 2 formulas for the standard deviation. I have showed you this on one of the recordings before. And depending on what information they have given us will determine which of the 2 formulas we use. So the first formula on the formula sheet requires us to take the square root of the sum of the probability of each return multiplied by whatever. They haven't given us any probability percentages in this question, which means that we can't use that first formula. We must use the second formula, which is the square root of the sum of rj minus re squared divided by n minus 1. So all you've got to look for is, have I got a probability percentage or not? If you have got one, you use formula 1. If you haven't got one, you use formula 2. So in this case here, and again, this is, the memo is incorrect because of this typo that they had here, which then translated into all the rest of this being incorrect. But you guys know how to do this calculation. It's in your textbooks as well. Rj minus re squared, sum of, and then divided by n minus 1. And then don't forget to take the square root of the answer so that you get your final answer. Where am I here? I'll just write this down so those of you that want to check if your answer is correct, it's 1.75 is the answer to the standard deviation for this question here. Then for our 3.3, calculate the expected market return if the following information applies. If the required rate of return is 2250, if the risk-free rate of return is 12, and the share is negatively correlated to the market, and its beta has been measured at a quarter of the market beta. Okay, so they've asked us over here to calculate the expected market return. So in our formula, it's RM that we have to calculate. They have given us the required rate of return. So what variable, which formula are we looking at here in 3.3? Which of our formulas are we going to use here in 3.3? We've got an expected market return, a required rate of return, a risk-free rate of return, and we've got a beta for our share. Which formula does that fit into? Who recognizes that? Our CAPM formula. I always forget where this is in the textbook. Let me just see if I can quickly find it for you. It's in Learning Unit 3. Page 87, yes, 100% correct. Thank you. And on page 87. So just quickly, if you've got your textbooks in front of you, just quickly go to page 87 because I want to show you something important because they quite often use this CAPM formula in different questions, and they are expecting you to remember that the CAPM formula is on your formula sheet, but remember your formula sheet will not include the key. So if you, I'm just trying to see where they have got, where have they, somewhere here, they tell us that CAPM is equal to the required rate of what we're calculating. In calculating CAPM, we are calculating the required rate of return of the investor. That's weird. I can't find it here now. I know it is here somewhere. Just because always whenever I'm looking for something in the textbook, then I can't find it. Okay. So as soon as you see these variables in a question, you should recognize them immediately. RM, this one over here, is RF, required rate of return. That is the answer to our formula, CAPM. And our share is negatively correlated, so the beta must have a minus in front of it, at a quarter of the market beta. So what is the value for the market beta? The market beta has got a standard value. What is that? Our market beta is always what? How much? +1. And you need to remember that because They always in the question, they very seldom will tell you the beta is 3 or -4. They'll always say it's half of the market beta or whatever it is, because they want you to remember that the market beta is +1. So that means if our market beta is negatively correlated, that means it moves in the opposite way to the market. So the market is +1. So negatively correlated means that the beta of this share will be -0.25, which is then a quarter of the market beta. And we must calculate the expected market return. So we have to solve for RM in the formula. So again, that can take a little bit of time mathematically, but again, don't panic about that. Just write out your CAPM formula. CAPM is equal to RF plus beta times RM minus RF. It is on the formula sheet. And then you fill in the variables that they've given to you. So under CAPM, we put the 22.5 required rate of return. They gave us the 12% risk-free rate of return. You had to work out that beta is -0.25. And then open brackets, RM is the variable we are solving for, minus 12% RF. We were given that amount. So again, you can see there's 1, 2, 3 marks just for writing that down correctly. 3 out of the 5 marks just for that. And then there's 2 marks for the maths or the calculation. So again, just practice this, and this is really just algebra. Just practice it. It's kind of just solving for a particular variable in an equation. Don't worry if you get muddled up and you can't do it. Get as far as you can and then just leave it and move on if you're stuck. Don't waste precious time. If you've got this bit correct, you've got more than half of the marks, so you should be happy with that. And then 3.4, they said, what would the percentage change? What would be the percentage change in the return of asset delta? So remember, our asset delta has got a beta of -0.25. If the market return had to decrease by 16%. So remember, our asset is negatively correlated, which means if the market is going to decrease, then the return for our asset is going to do what? Negatively correlated means if the market is going to decrease, our assets return will increase. The opposite, it's going to move in the opposite direction. Negatively correlated means it will move in the opposite direction. So if the market increased, our asset would decrease. If the market decreases, our asset is going to increase. Remember, this minus in front of the beta just indicates negative correlation. It doesn't indicate that the return is going to decrease. So our calculation for 4 marks is going to be -16%, because remember they said the market is going to decrease by 16. So -16 times -0.25, our share will increase by 4%. Remember, a minus times a minus equals a plus. So again, that shouldn't take you 4 minutes. So you can also again save up a little bit of time here. And also with this 5 minutes, that also definitely won't take you 5 minutes to write that line item down. And if you just leave the rest of the maths and come back to it afterwards. So that again, in all of these little places, you're saving up 2 minutes or 3 minutes so that you are, you've got that time to invest in your longer questions. Okay, anybody got any questions so far on any of these amounts, any of these questions that we've done so far? And are you guys following? Are you following the I need to put a Y in there. When I say everything making sense, I mean, let's say if we're happy that 80% of everything is making sense, then I'm happy. I'm not saying are you remembering everything, but as long as you're understanding the explanation as we go through it now, and that it's helping you. Okay, so that's the majority of you. So that's fine if you didn't answer. You remember, you're welcome to say no if you really lost. At least it gives me an indication. Otherwise, I'll just take a response as being, say, you're kind of halfway there, which is also perfectly fine at this point. Okay. Guys, I see it is 7:15 now already. The next question, question 4, is a 40-mark question, and it's quite long, so it would probably take at least, say, 15 or 20 minutes to work through. Do you want to work through it now, or otherwise I'll record it for you tomorrow or during the rest of the course of this week? I will record the rest of this paper. So even if we do question 4 tonight, I will record question 5 and question 6 for you as well, so that you've got the whole paper to go over. Otherwise, I'll just record the last couple of questions. You want to work through it now? Okay, that's fine. And if anybody hasn't got the time to stay online now, that's also perfectly fine. You can leave, and then remember it will be recorded, so you'll be able to follow that now. But this question 4 is a good question because it is one that not all of it has been asked before in one of your assignments, so it is a little bit different to some of the others that we've already looked at. It's actually not it's a 40-mark question, but it's not the longest in terms of the calculations that you've got to do. So I think this is one of the ones where you can make up some time. Sorry guys, just give me 1 second. Okay. So 40 marks. So let's just go and have a look at, so let's have a look what they've given us. We can see here we've got projected cash flows, initial investment, cash flows for 5 years. And then what are they going to ask us? They said calculate the internal rate of return. So that's our IRR for the Pretoria facility, and advise as to whether or not you would accept the project based on your answer. So remember again, there's that word and. We're going to do our calculation, and then we're going to remember to advise whether we'd accept the project or not. So when they are asking for an IRR, it's basically the return of the project that they're asking for. So what have they given us? They've given us the initial investment, which, remember, very importantly, initial investment is a cash outflow. But they won't put brackets around it on the question paper. You must remember that's a cash outflow. And then the cash flows generated by the project, these will all be inflows. So this here, outflow, and these will be inflows. Sometimes in these questions, they'll put brackets around one of these amounts, which will then remind you that sometimes one of these is an outflow and not an inflow. But what I'm trying to draw your attention to is pay attention to whether that's an outflow or an inflow that they've given you, so that you write it down or enter it in your calculator the correct way round. We've got a cost of capital of 18% and a targeted payback period of 1.5 years. So they've asked here the internal rate of return. So let's go and have a look what we need to write down to do that. So this memo is in the format of, again, what your inputs would be in your financial calculator. And it is the quickest way of writing an answer down. So even if you don't have a financial calculator to press that button and calculate the final answer, if you write all of your inputs down, you will get 99 or 90% of the marks for the question. So when we've got an initial cash outflow, this is always, let me write it here, that is then always at year 0 or time 0. Something that takes place in the actual present moment, that is year 0 or time 0. Where these cash flows will take place at the end of each of these years, that's why we then use year 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 to indicate those amounts. Okay. So here as well, you'll see in front of the 6.5 million, they've put a plus minus in front of that to indicate that that is a negative amount. Hopefully by now, if you have got a financial calculator, you know that in order to enter amount as a negative in the calculator, you type in the numbers. So you would type in 6.5 million, 6500, etc. And then press the plus minus key right at the bottom of the calculator before you press enter. And that's how you enter the amount to indicate to the calculator that the amount is negative. And it's negative because that's a cash outflow. Then each of the next 5 amounts, those are all entered in as positive figures because those are inflows. And just take note here in year 3, they told us, where's our extra information? Here. It will require maintenance upgrades at the end of year 3, which is expected to cost a quarter of the initial investment. So the end of year 3 means that includes here plus maintenance cost. Okay, so that's why here in year 3 we've taken the, sorry, I said plus, this is a minus, I beg your pardon, I don't want to, because it's a cash inflow from our investment minus the maintenance cost. So the 3.8, which is an inflow, minus 1/4 of our initial investment. So our cash inflow for year 3 is then reduced by the cost of that maintenance. So you must show your calculations here as well to make sure that you get all of those marks. Year 4 and then in year 5 again, at the end of year 5, at the end of its useful life, which means at the end of year 5, the equipment will need to be dismantled at an expected cost of 325,000, and so that's a minus 325, and it will be sold for 110, so that will be a plus 110. Okay, so the 325 will be a cash flow out, and the 110 will be an additional cash flow in. And they tell us here that these amounts, in other words, the maintenance upgrade and these amounts at the end of year 5, have not been included in these cash flows below. So in the end of year 5, we take the operating cash flow minus the dismantling costs plus the selling price for the equipment. And that is then our total cash flow for the 5th year. And then IRR is basically solving for, where's my calculator? For the IY. That's the value for R, the percentage. I have given you the, in your announcements, I gave you in detail of what the keys are that you need to press and enter on your computer in order to do this exact calculation. So I'm not going to give it to you now just to save time, but you have already got it in one of those announcements that I gave you. So there's our calculation. So the internal rate of return of the project is 23.23%. So yes, we can accept the project because the internal rate of return is more than the cost of capital of 18%. So this 18% that they gave us here, we didn't need to use it in the calculation, but we are using that to compare to see whether the return of the project, how does that stack up against our required rate of return? And obviously, remember, there are some interchangeable figures. We can use the terminology cost of capital. We can use the word required rate of return. Or we can use, what was the other thing that I mentioned now? There's another one of these, and they all mean the same thing. So whether we say cost of capital or required rate of return, that all means what percentage do we require from the investment. Okay, so hopefully you guys are happy with that one. Then 4.2 for 6 marks. Advise the management board of any 3 reasons why you wouldn't suggest, please take note, wouldn't suggest that they use the payback method to calculate whether the project should be accepted or not. So you know, in your textbooks with each of these various appraisal methods that that we study, they give us advantages and disadvantages of each of those appraisal methods. So this and all of those are learning objectives. So that's what they want in 4.2. The disadvantages of the payback method would be the reasons why you wouldn't suggest that they use the payback method. So again, it's making sure that you interpret the way they've asked the question, you interpret that correctly with how the information is presented to you in your textbooks. So again, this 4.2 for 6 marks would come straight out of your textbook. So any 3 disadvantages, you would get 2 marks each. So again, this is literally taken directly, typed directly out of the textbook, the different disadvantages. And there are, I think, four disadvantages to the payback method. So you had to remember 3 of them in order to get all of those marks. And this next one here is the one that I actually wanted to do with you guys this evening because it is a little tricky. And I know some of the students have asked me questions about this one and have battled with it a little bit. And this is the reinvestment assumption. So it's also in one of our appraisal techniques. What this is learning unit 6 and 7, so our capital budgeting applications. This question comes from learning unit 6 and 7. So when they ask for the reinvestment, so just go to the, when they ask for the reinvestment assumption, this one can be a little tricky. But once you know what the method is, then it is super easy, and you can also do it really quickly. So it will never take you anything close to 17 minutes to do this question if you know what your method is. There's just lots of marks for it because there's quite a few lines in the calculation that marks have been allocated to. Okay, so just pay attention. So we've got at the top here the projected cash flows for the Pretoria facility. These cash flows here take place over 5 years. Okay, now they are saying, upon further analysis, we've determined another possible location, which is in Durban. This has only got a useful life of 2 years. So one of our projects has got 5-year useful life. The other one has got a 2-year useful life. So remember, the whole thing with the reinvestment assumption is, how do we reasonably compare two different projects that have got completely different lengths of useful life? How do we compare a project with 5 years of useful life to a project with 2 years of useful life and know that the answer makes sense? This is when we use the reinvestment assumption. So here is our cash flow. Here are our cash flows for the Durban facility. So there we've got 2 years worth of cash flow. So they say, using the reinvestment assumption, taking into account the expected lives of the two facilities, calculate the net present value of the Durban facility only by using the financial tables that have been provided. Okay, so again, remember, if they've said Durban only, don't go and do a calculation for NPV for both, because you'll just be wasting some of your precious time. So how does this reinvestment assumption work? Have any of you got that far in your revision? With the reinvestment assumption, what are we looking for? We are looking for the lowest common denominator between the two useful lives. So here we've got one project that's 5 years and another project that is going to last for 2 years. So what is the lowest common denominator for 5 and 2? Do you guys remember that from your school maths? What's the lowest common denominator? If I've got the number 5 and the number 2, what is the lowest common denominator? Do you remember how to do that? It is 10, Norman. Correct. So for those of you that don't remember, the lowest common denominator is, what is the lowest number into which I can divide both of the two numbers that I've got? So 2 can't, sometimes if they had given you 5 and 10 as your two numbers, then 10 would be the lowest common denominator, because 5 can be divided into 10. So the lowest number that they can both be divided into would be 10, because 10 can go into 10 once and 5 can go into 10 twice. When we've got the numbers 5 and 2, 2 can't be divided into 5 because we want a whole number. So what's the lowest number that they can both be divided into? So you start with 5. 5, no. 6, no. 7, 8, 9. When you get to 10, 5 can go into 10 twice and 2 can go into 10 5 times. So 10 is then our lowest common denominator. So you need to be able to identify that. And now the reinvestment assumption says, because I want to equalize the two projects, I'm going to calculate the net present value for each of them as if they were going to last for 10 years each. So your Pretoria facility, you would have to repeat this investment, reinvest the money twice, 5 years and then another 5 years would give you the 10 years. And for the Durban facility, you're going to reinvest your money, reinvest your investment 5 times to get to 10 years. So that's why it's called reinvestment. You can read the theory in the textbook of why they use that. So then to do the calculation, look at carefully here. We've got an initial cash flow out of 3750 and then an in of 28 and an in of 39. So the first amounts we write down are exactly as we are given. Year 0 out 3750, then in 28 and in 39. Then this is important. In the same year that the last cash inflow happens, you begin again. So here, out 37, in 28 and in 39. That is one set of investments. Then beginning in this year, I've got out 37, in 28 and in 39. That's my reinvestment that I've done. Then again, in the last year, I then reinvest again. So here again, I'm starting minus 37 plus 28 minus 39. There I've invested, reinvested for a third time. Then in the last year of that set of reinvestments, I do my next reinvestment. Year 6 minus 3750 plus 28 plus 39. And then in the last year of that reinvestment, I reinvest again. So you can see what's happened. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So 2 times 5 equals 10. And I've now worked out my cash flows over 10 years. And if you do it correctly, you will finish exactly on that number 10, which is your lowest common denominator. But you must just remember, you'll see, always just remember that in the last year of the one set of reinvestment, you begin the next reinvestment in that last year. So if you look at year 2, in year 2, I've got an inflow of 39 and an outflow of 3750. So the net cash flow for year 2 is plus 150. So you're going to take 150 as the cash flow amount for year 2. And then the same thing in year 4, in year 6, and year 8. Okay. If they had also asked for Pretoria, you would have done the same. Remember, Pretoria has got 5 years of cash flow. So you would have started at year 0, the initial cash flow out, and you would have gone through with the first investment up to year 5. And then in year 5, you would have started your cash outflow and gone for another 5 years down to year 10. So Pretoria, you would have invested twice to get to 10 years. So by doing that, we've been able to convert the cash flow of both projects to 10 years, calculate the NPV of both of them, and then you can compare those two NPVs, and whichever one is the greater NPV is the project that you would choose out of the two of them. But in this particular question, they said calculate the NPV of Durban only, and then use the financial tables that have been provided. So financial tables, here's our cash flow. The net present value means I must multiply each cash flow by a present value factor, and I must use my cost of capital of 18% for my present value factor. So if you've got your tables are in your textbooks, if you want to go and have a look there on page, what do I want here? We want the present value of a lump sum table. So that should be page 61 in your textbooks. Go and have a look on page 61 on your textbooks and go to the column for 18%, and you will find these factors in that column. So just pay attention, because this initial cash flow out of 3,750 took place at time 0, which is the exact present moment. We multiply that by 1 whole, because there is no time lapse involved. I'm paying that money out exactly at the present moment. So the present value of that 3750 is 3750, because the cash flow took place at time 0. Then all of those other cash flows take place at the end of every year. So that's why our cash flow for year 1, we then use period 1 and the column for 18%. And then each of these ones then is period 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 from your table. That's where those factors come from. And then you multiply each of them out, add all the present values together, and the total is then the net present value. And just pay very careful attention. If any of these amounts are negative, then this present value must also be negative. That quite often happens in questions. And then when you're doing your addition of your column of numbers, again, make sure you subtract or add relevantly if they are positive or negative amounts. Okay. Get this out of my way. Do you guys, did you understand that the principles of the reinvestment calculation? Once you've got it, it's very easy. It's easy to remember, and it's also quick to do. Okay, awesome. Most of you are happy with that. Okay, guys, so in question 4, there's just one short little question left, and then we are done. So you can see, if you know that method, that 17 marks, you can easily get those 17 marks for that reinvestment. The only students that battle and can't do that on the paper are those that haven't practiced that question. So for 6 marks, they then want to know, calculate the break-even cash flow for both Pretoria and Durban facility. And then, if, in other words, what's the break-even cash flow for Pretoria? What's the break-even cash flow for Durban? And then if we had to select one of those facilities based on the one with the lowest break-even cash flow, which one would we select? So remember again, a break-even cash flow is again going to be a PMT amount, because what we do in this break-even calculation is we assume that the cash flow from our projects would be the net present value equalized over every year of the project. So we assume that the break-even amount would be an equal amount in each year of the project. So we basically are wanting to solve for PMT in each of our projects. So if you have a look at the answer here for Pretoria, we take the initial cash flow out, and for Durban as well, that's our present value. The value for N is how many years our cash flows are going to take place over. So Pretoria is a 5-year project, Durban a 2-year project. For I or R, we use our cost of capital, and then we compute the value for PMT. So what we are calculating, in order to recover our investment of 6.5 million, we would at an 18% cost of capital over 5 years, the lowest possible cash flow required to recover that 6.5 would be 2.078 million. And then for Durban, in order to recover our investment of 3.75 million invested over 2 years, our cash flow, lowest possible cash flow over each of those 2 years needs to be 2.395 million if we are discounting our cash flows by 18% for cost of capital. So that means that we are going to choose Pretoria because we only have to achieve a positive cash flow of 2.078556 per annum in order to break even on our investment of 6.5 million, as compared to Durban, where we need to achieve a cash inflow of 2.395 per annum in order to achieve a break even on our investment of 3.750. Okay, does that make sense to you as to what we've actually calculated there and how we did it? Okie dokie. So there are some 5 brave souls that are still online at this point of the game. So I hope that's helped you with your revision again, guys. So we've now got 3 different exam papers that I have gone through that I've posted for you. There's just a couple more questions in this paper, and I'll post those as well, so that at least now, after going through all 3 of the papers, you've got a very good idea of what to expect in the exam. You've got explanations of theory, you've got explanations of the calculations, and that it's helped you to understand the work a little bit better as well. Okay, thank you very much, guys, for being patient, and I hope this has been helpful to all of you. It will definitely pay off those of you that attend these and listen to these recordings. Will definitely help you. Awesome, guys. So I'm going to go and get warm now. I'm freezing where my hot water bottle that's on my lap has gone cold while I've been sitting here. So I need to go and warm it up again. So have a lovely rest of your evening and stay warm as well. And then I will chat to you guys again. And just the last thing, please remember, I'm available for questions, and it's very, very important that you do ask me questions now while you are revising. Don't be shy to ask questions. You can ask me anything at all, and if I'm able to, I will help you. Okay, awesome. Thanks, Rosanna. Okay, guys, I'm going to end the